that now. Even as good as Trout is, he's a West Coast guy. So most of his games are on, 10:30 at night when they start. East Coast people aren't going to stay up, even if they can get the game. And how many games of those are on Major League Baseball Network or ESPN or something there where people are going to stay involved? So that's, I think, the big problem with Major League Baseball is it doesn't feel like that they're out there promoting their stars the way that the NBA does. The NBA has found their niche in that they promote stars, not necessarily teams. So if it's a Tuesday night and you're sitting at home on your couch and you really don't have much going on, you turn on NBA TV and it's the Bucks Pacers, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I do want to see Giannis play. I do want to see Oladipo play. You find yourself watching that game. Baseball, they don't feel like they've promoted their stars, or there's not a reason to watch a lot of these guys. So when it's a Tuesday night and there's a game on, you're probably not going to watch it because it's game 97 of 162 games. It really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, and you don't have a reason to watch. And I think that's what's hurt baseball is even on our show, when we look at content and we look at what is driving fans and what's driving Twitter and what's driving debate on other shows, baseball is rarely in that mix. And I think they have to find a way to fix that. They have to find a hook. They have to find some reason to make us watch and to watch their young players and really promote them. And I don't think they've done a very good job with that. And I think when you look at the NBA's model, I think that's why they dominate the summer. We want to know where LeBron's going to end up. And then you can always talk and pick apart how that's going to play out. Where's Kawhi going to end up? Next summer, we're going to be talking about 5, 6, 7, 8 other guys, and we'll be talking about them halfway through July and how they impact the league and their teams. Baseball has got to get to that point. And to your other point, the contracts, they're part of that. Bryce Harper, the talk is when he becomes a free agent, he's going to sign a 10-year, $400 million deal. And we both know in 5 or 6 years, he's not going to be close to the same player that he is. And then some team's going to be sitting on that money year after year, struggling. From that standpoint, baseball does have a lot of work to do to get their game right. It's a long season. They're not really promoting their stars. Eric, it just feels like a recipe for disaster. Well, Eric, to make a smooth transition, speaking of recipes for disaster, it feels like that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers currently have right now, as they have been unable to get LeVeon Bell under contract for the second year. And according to LeVeon Bell's agent, this will be his last year as a Steeler. Once again, it came down to the deadline, trying to get a long-term agreement worked out. That deadline came and went for the players that were on franchise tags. It looks like the best offer that the Steelers came was 5 years, $70 million, but there was $30 million guaranteed for a player like Bell. He felt like that wasn't enough for him. He turned that deal down. He'll play on the franchise tag this year. We think he'll play on the franchise tag. He could set out half the season. There's talk about that, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But, Eric, here we go. A player like LeVeon Bell, he is a extremely important part of this Steelers offense. We've seen the difference that he makes for this team when he's on the field, what he does, not only running the football, but even from receiving the football, how much they use him out of the slot. This is a Steelers team that feels like their window may be this year. And then you start to look at this team. Ben is on the backside of his career. Antonio Brown, 30 years old. LeVeon Bell looks to be spending his last season in Pittsburgh. So we know the NFL, they have been devaluing the running back position now for the past few years. Lots of running back by committee. The average salary of running backs has continued to go down. It was shocking to see the deal Devontae Freeman got from Atlanta last offseason. So do you feel like the Steelers have made the right decision here in not paying Bell more, not making him their franchise leader in terms of a player they want to keep for the next couple years? Or do you feel like they've made the right move by not investing in a position that really the league as a whole has not had a lot of value in the last few years?
I see this both ways. I really do. And that's what's going to be, kind of difficult to make a decision here as far as, do I side with LeVeon? Do I side with the Steelers? Here's my take on it, because I do see it from both sides. From LeVeon's side, I understand why he wants to get paid as a best player in the league, not just a best running back. He's had 7,996 yards total in his first 5 years, which is the highest yardage total ever for a player in their first 5 years. Now, let's do point and counterpoint. The counterpoint to that from the Steelers side of things is most players don't last much more than 5 years in the NFL. In fact, we just saw a guy, DeMarco Murray, retire after his 7th season. And if you would have said, hey, does he deserve a huge contract after his 5th season? You might have looked at a guy that was rushing for almost 2,000 yards and saying, yeah, pay him big time. 2 years later, he's out of the league. So I think from the counterpoint to that, the Steelers are looking at it and saying running backs are, a dime a dozen. I mean, Le'Veon Bell, is he great now? Absolutely he is. So was Priest Holmes at one time. So were many other guys. And I'm just naming random. I named Priest because a random guy that you can pick out in history, guys that have a great 2 or 3 year stretch. You can't pick as many guys out like an Emmitt Smith or a Barry Sanders or you fill in the blank who have had a career of 9 or 10 years of success. The Steelers are hedging their bet that Le'Veon Bell, being 26 years old, might have another year or two in the tank and then might just drop off the table. But if you're Le'Veon Bell, I totally get where he's coming from, Justin, because you're going to say, look, this is my value now. You pay me as to my value now, not what you think it might be in 3 years. So the downside to this is that he's got a ticking clock here as well. And the reason that might be very bad for this season, because you nailed it, the Steelers are kind of in a win now mode. They've got a dinosaur as a quarterback who's already thought about retirement. They've got Antonio Brown at 30. It just seems like it's win now for them. But if Le'Veon doesn't want to risk getting injured on a franchise tag because he knows, hey, I've been in the league 5 years, a 6th year, I might not have more years to go, he's not going to put himself at a huge amount of risk without getting paid first. So it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And that's why I think it's going to be a difficult situation for the Steelers this year.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you. I think both parties had to do what they felt was best for themselves. For the Steelers standpoint, here's a guy that's had injuries. He's had off the field issues. What is his window? How much more can you pay him? I think the contract that they offered or that they rumored to offer came down to a 2-year deal worth about $30 million guaranteed. So I think from Pittsburgh's standpoint, they feel his window's 2 years. And then I think they see him going the road that many of the other running backs do, is just having that fall off at the end of 2 years. For Le'Veon Bell, I think he looks at it as, okay, I can take the franchise tag. I can be far and away in terms of average salary, the top running back. And then next year I'll go to be a free agent. Unless he's franchised again, he's going to get another huge number, but he's going to be a free agent. And at that point, maybe a team gives him another $30 million guaranteed. Maybe another team buys in that he has 2 more years after this year left in the tank, or someone that gets desperate that has a lot of cap money to spend gives him $40 million guaranteed and spreads it over 3 years, with the last year not having as much guaranteed. I think that's what Bell's got to play with, and I agree with him. He's got to do what's best. We know the windows for running backs are short. He's starting to get to the point of that window where for many of them it starts to close. He hasn't seemed to have that decline, but he's also been a guy that's had some major injuries that have shut him down for long periods of time. So I think from his standpoint, he's gambling on himself. I'll play the franchise tag out this year. I hope to stay healthy and go into next year. And even if it's not a contender, if it's a team out there that has $50-60 million in cap space, maybe they're willing to bring me in and pay me $14-15 million a year for the next 2 or 3 years. I think for both these teams, it's the gamble that they have to take. If you're Pittsburgh, you don't believe in the guy, you see him every single day, and you only feel his window is 2 years, then you've got to stick with that, because just like we talked about in baseball, NFL is a different animal in that it's a hardened cap. You cannot go over that cap. So when you have a player that's socking up as much money as Bell is and he's not producing, it is death in the NFL. It's not like the NBA where you can go into the luxury tax and you can sort of make amends for your mistakes like the Lakers are trying to do, for example, with Luol Deng, where you have some different options there. The NFL, that's a huge chunk of the salary cap to invest in a guy that's not producing. Your guys that get paid that much, they better produce. So I think from the Steelers standpoint, they'll start to work on what's next for them. Where can they go out and find another guy? Where can they start to put those pieces together? And if Le'Veon Bell goes out and signs a massive deal next year, the Steelers will get a high compensatory pick anyways. So I think for both parties, Eric, I think it's really what you saw almost with the Kirk Cousins situation. Washington franchised him up to the point where they felt like it wasn't worth it anymore. And when Cousins became a free agent, lo and behold, here's the Vikings sitting there waiting to hand him a fully guaranteed contract with the NFL, which we've never seen before.
Yeah, and I know one team that would pay him, the New York Jets, but Le'Veon has made it very clear that he will not play for the New York Jets. So unfortunately, my team out of the AFC could have a good running back for the next couple years, but Le'Veon wants to play that card and be a jerk about it.
So you're saying you're not going to get a Jets Le'Veon Bell jersey next year?
Heck no. And even if he goes there, I'm not getting one if he wants to play like that.
Well, one guy you didn't buy the jersey of that was on the team with your boy LeBron James last year was Isaiah Thomas. Our last topic here in segment 1 was Isaiah Thomas. He actually signed a deal with the Denver Nuggets. And as we talked about on the show a couple weeks ago, Eric, we didn't think he was going to get a big deal, that he was probably going to get a 1-year type of prove-it deal, and that's exactly what he got. He teams up with his former head coach back in his Sacramento Kings days, Mike Malone, who's now the coach of the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets bring Isaiah Thomas in on a 1-year, $2 million deal. He'll be the anchor of their second unit, and for Denver, I think it's a really good move for that second unit because it brings them some scoring off of that bench that we know that they need, and really every team needs through the regular season to have that guy that can come in and be the instant offense when your starters are off the floor. But here's Isaiah Thomas. We spent time talking about him this past season, some of the woes in Cleveland, of course, the trade to LA. This was a guy that 2 years ago looked like the Brinks truck was getting backed up, that he was going to be a $100 million guy easy. There was talk about would he get the Supermax. Now he's playing on a 1-year deal worth $2 million. When it looked like he was going to be getting at least 15 times that at one point. Eric, Isaiah played this past year with the hip injury, never looked like the same guy, never had that explosion back, and it feels like it has cost him. So did Isaiah Thomas make a mistake trying to come back this year and play, or is it just a guy that with his mentality, how he's built, that he would have never been able to just sit out and basically do what Kawhi Leonard did, and that's preserve yourself and waiting for that big deal?
It's another very complicated situation because we don't know all of the details beyond what we know publicly and what's been given to us out of his camp and out of the different teams, training staffs. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because I feel bad for the guy. I really do. I mean, as a Boston Celtic the year before he came to Cleveland, phenomenal season. I mean, we talked about it. He was in the MVP conversation type of thing. And you thought, yeah, here comes the Supermax. Here comes an opportunity to get paid. And then Boston, at the first opportunity, turns their back on him, uses him as a trading chip, and he's out the door the first chance that they get to get a different and better player. And so if you're looking at it from that standpoint, you might start to say, did Danny Ainge and others kind of have a feeling that this was going to happen? And then you see a guy who goes to Cleveland, he still does rehab, and you don't know what kind of pressures he was under to get on the floor, whether that was from LeBron James himself, whether that was from their team and their doctors saying, look, we gave up Kyrie, we got you, and you're not even playing yet. We got to have you out on the floor. And then clearly we saw in his 13 to 15 game performance with Cleveland that he was not the same player, and I was very, very hard on him. But then he goes to LA, he still has trouble, you still see him nursing that injury, and there starts to be more to this story developing to where you think, all right, maybe it's just a really bad situation for a nice guy, a good player, and this could really send his career down a different path. What I'm hoping for is that he does actually do really well in Denver. I don't wish any bad, luck or karma on him. I hope he does well in Denver, and then I hope he does get a decent 3 or 4 year contract that's at a higher rate with a better team. And well, it might be with Denver again. They're actually a better team, as we've been talking about. So maybe his final run is in Denver after this season. They re-sign him for a few years. I would be fine if that happened for him. But I think what this goes to show you is that LeBron took a lot of blame. Yes, I'm going to make this about LeBron.
Oh, shocker.
LeBron took a lot of blame for that time in Cleveland. And I think we are now finding that there's a whole lot more to this Isaiah Thomas story than just the couple months he spent with LeBron James.
Do you think Kawhi Leonard, what he's gone through this past year, not playing through an injury, do you think Isaiah, his situation had any impact on Kawhi and his team's thinking?
You'd be hard-pressed to say that it didn't. I mean, if Kawhi is getting certain advice from the Spurs and then certain advice from other doctors in New York, and he's feeling conflicted about that, and then he's seeing other players like IT or, like Derrick Rose or others who have then struggled with these chronic and habitual injuries after a certain catalyst event, yeah, if you're Kawhi and you've got a career ahead of you, maybe that's in the back of your mind.
And especially with Kawhi's uncle being part of this process, I would have to think that it had some kind of impact to sit there and see the money that was on the table, see Isaiah get hurt, to opt not to have the surgery and try to rehab it. I think you're right. I think when Isaiah went to Cleveland,